The billionaire, Mr. Alistair Vance, was dying. At least that's what it felt like. His head was pounding, his body ached, and he was covered in a cold sweat. He was lying in his giant bed in a room as big as a normal house. His beautiful wife, Isabella, glided into the room. She was wearing a silk robe that shimmered in the dim light. In her hands she held a single delicate teacup on a silver tray. "My darling," Isabella whispered, her voice sounding strangely sweet like honey. "I've brought you something to help you feel better. A special tea. It will make all the pain go away." Alistair tried to smile at his wife. He was so tired. He loved her so much even if she had been distant lately. He trusted her. He slowly propped himself up on one elbow. His hand, which controlled banks and businesses all over the world, was shaking. He reached out for the cup. Isabella's eyes watched him. They were bright and unblinking. Alistair's fingers were just 1 inch from the cup. Bang! The bedroom door slammed open, crashing against the wall. Both Alistair and Isabella jumped, their hearts stopping. Standing in the doorway was the new maid, Elena. She was a simple, young woman who usually never made a sound. But now she was pale as a ghost. Her chest was rising and falling as she tried to breathe. Her eyes were wide with pure terror. Isabella spun around, her face twisting into an ugly mask of anger. "How dare you?" she hissed. But Elena didn't look at Isabella. Her eyes were locked on the teacup in Alistair's hand. As Alistair looked at his maid, confused by the interruption, Elena did the one thing she was never supposed to do. She opened her mouth and screamed. It was a scream that ripped through the silence of the giant mansion. A scream of pure, desperate warning. "Don't drink it, master. Please don't drink that tea." Alistair's hand froze. He stared at the teacup. He stared at his terrified maid. And then he stared at his wife. The sweet smile on Isabella's face was gone. In its place was a look of such cold, murderous rage that Alistair felt his blood run cold. What was happening? What did Elena see? And why did his wife suddenly look like she was ready to kill? This is the moment that will change everyone's life. What is in that cup? And who is telling the truth? Before we find out what happens next, please take 1 second to hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. It helps our channel grow so we can keep bringing you these amazing stories. And don't forget to drop a comment with where you are watching from in the world. We love to see where our stories travel. Now, to understand how we got to this moment of madness, we must go back 3 months. We need to go back to the day the trouble first began. Alistair Vance was not just rich. He was one of the richest men in the world. He lived in a house that looked more like a palace, with tall white gates and gardens so big you could get lost in them for hours. He owned skyscrapers that touched the clouds, cars that looked like silver bullets, and private jets that could take him anywhere in the world in a matter of hours. Anything money could buy, he had. He had everything, except a happy home. For 10 long years, Alistair had been married to Isabella. When they first met, she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. She was smart and funny, and her laugh made him feel alive. But that was a long time ago. Over the years, something in Isabella had changed. She had grown cold. She was like a beautiful, perfect statue. Lovely to look at, but hard and cold to the touch. When Alistair came home from a long, hard day at work, she would barely look up from her phone. He would try to tell her about his day and she would just say, That's nice, dear." When he tried to hold her hand while they watched a movie, she would gently pull her hand away. "Not now, darling," she'd murmur. "You'll wrinkle my dress." He was the richest man in the city, but he was also the loneliest. He ate dinner alone in his giant dining room, even when his wife was in the same house. The mansion was so big, so clean, and so empty. It didn't feel like a home. It felt like a museum. Alistair felt a deep, aching loneliness. He still loved his wife, and he desperately wanted to see her smile again. He thought, maybe if I just give her more, she will be happy. So he tried. For their anniversary, he bought her a river of diamonds, a necklace that cost more than most people's houses. He put it in a velvet box and gave it to her with a hopeful smile. Isabella opened it. She looked at it for a second. "Oh," she said, her voice flat. "It's lovely, dear." She closed the box and put it in a drawer in her closet. Alistair knew that drawer was already full of other expensive jewelry boxes that she had never even opened. He bought her a brand new bright red sports car. He had it delivered with a giant bow on top. She looked at it from the window. "Thank you, Alistair," she said, sighing. "But I liked my old one. This one is too loud." He took her on a vacation to a private island with water so blue it looked like a postcard. He hoped that, alone with no distractions, they could talk. They could be like they used to be. But Isabella spent the entire week taking pictures of herself on the beach. She posted hundreds of photos for her social media friends, showing off her perfect life. But she never took a single picture with him. She never once put her phone down to just walk on the beach and hold his hand. No matter what he gave her, it was never enough. Her heart was a locked box, and Alistair was starting to believe he would never find the key. One day, Isabella came to him with a new complaint. She was pacing the living room, a room so big it had 3 separate seating areas. "This house is just too big, Alistair," she said, sighing as if it was a terrible burden. "I simply cannot manage it alone. The cleaning, the cooking, it's too much. The last maid was too slow. I had to fire her." Alistair was tired, but he agreed. "Whatever you need, my dear," he said. He just wanted peace. He told his security team to put out an advertisement for a new live-in maid. Dozens of women came for an interview over the next week. They arrived in taxis, wearing stiff suits and carrying folders with long lists of where they had worked before. They all sat straight-backed, and they all looked at Alistair like he was a walking bank account. None of them felt right. They felt as cold as the house. And then, the very last person came in. Her name was Elena. She was the complete opposite of everyone else. She was young and she looked nervous, her hands twisting in her lap. Her dress was simple, old and faded, but it was perfectly clean and ironed. She came from a tiny village very far away, a village with no clean water and no electricity. Alistair looked at her papers. He was tired. His head hurt. He looked at the young woman who was staring at her own feet. "Why do you want this job, Elena?" he asked, his voice softer than he intended. Elena looked up. She looked him straight in the eye. Alistair was surprised. Most people were afraid to look at him. But her eyes, though nervous, were clear and honest. "Sir," she said, her voice shaking just a little, "my mother is very, very sick." She paused, taking a breath. "The doctor in our village, he can't help her. He said she needs expensive medicine from the city hospital. Medicine that costs." Her voice cracked. "It costs more than my family has seen in a lifetime. I traveled for 3 days on buses to get here. I will do any job. I will scrub your floors, I will cook, I will clean, I will work 20 hours a day. I'm not afraid of work, sir. I'm only afraid of losing my mother. Please, sir, just give me a chance." Something in Alistair's cold, lonely heart softened. He looked at this young woman. He saw her honesty. He saw her desperation. But most of all, he saw her love for her mother. She wasn't here for his money. She was here for her family. In this giant empty house, he had finally found someone with a real warm heart. "You're hired," Alistair said. Elena's eyes filled with tears. Her face, which was so full of worry, just crumpled. She fell to her knees right there on the expensive marble floor and sobbed. "Thank you, sir. Thank you. I will not let you down. I promise I will work so hard for you. Thank you." Alistair was taken aback. He was not used to this kind of real, raw emotion. He awkwardly told her she could stand up, and that her room was in the back of the house. Elena started work the very next day, and she was a blessing. She was the best maid they had ever had. She woke up before the sun came up. She started by cleaning the giant kitchen, and by the time Alistair came down for breakfast, the silver was polished until it looked like a mirror, and the floors were so clean you could see your reflection. She was smart and she learned quickly. She cooked simple, delicious meals. They weren't the fancy, complicated dishes Isabella demanded, but they were warm and full of flavor. They reminded Alistair of his own grandmother's cooking. For the first time in years, the cold, empty mansion started to feel like a home. Alistair would come home and smell fresh bread baking. He would see clean floors and bright, shining windows. Elena was always quiet, always polite, and always had a small, respectful smile. She never spoke unless she was spoken to. Alistair started to smile more. "You are a blessing, Elena," he told her one day after eating a wonderful, simple chicken soup. "Thank you." Elena just blushed, her eyes looking down. "I am grateful for the job, sir." Alistair was happy. But someone else was not. Isabella hated Elena. She hated how humble Elena was. She hated how hard she worked. Most of all, she hated that her husband, Alistair, was praising the new maid's simple cooking. "This chicken is too dry." Isabella would snap at dinner, even though Alistair had just said it was perfect. "You missed a spot," she would yell, pointing at a perfectly clean floor. "This is not how you iron my dresses. You are a stupid, useless village girl. Are you trying to ruin my clothes?" Isabella was mean and cruel. When Alistair was not home, her true evil nature came out. She treated Elena like dirt. One day, Isabella was drinking a glass of dark red wine. She saw Elena cleaning the pure white carpet in the living room. Isabella walked over, looked Elena right in the eye, and then accidentally spilled the entire glass of dark red wine all over the white carpet. "Oh, clumsy me," Isabella sneered with a fake pout. "Look at this mess you've made me make. Clean it up, girl. And if I see even a tiny pink stain in the morning, your pay for the entire week will be gone. Do you understand?" Elena's eyes filled with tears, but she did not say a word. She just bowed her head, said, "Yes, madam," and ran to get the cleaning supplies. Elena was on her hands and knees for hours that night, scrubbing the wine stain, her hands raw and red, her back aching. She cried silently as she scrubbed, but she would not quit. She thought of her mother, sick in her village. She had to be strong. She had to save her. Isabella seemed angry that she couldn't break the new maid. She wanted to make Elena run away. But Elena's quiet spirit was stronger than Isabella's loud cruelty. This went on for 2 months. The house was a strange, silent battlefield. When Alistair was home, it was peaceful and warm. When he left, it became a place of fear and anger. But then, one sunny afternoon, when Alistair was at a very important business meeting, something new happened. Elena was in the giant, 2-story hallway, polishing the marble floor. She was finally starting to feel safe. She had sent a lot of money home, and her mother was starting to get the medicine. Suddenly she heard a car engine. She looked up. It wasn't Alistair's car. His car was a quiet, expensive Rolls-Royce. It hummed like a kitten. This car was loud and it roared. It sounded angry. A low, bright red sports car, the kind you see in movies, sped up the long driveway and stopped right in front of the door. A man got out. He was tall, handsome, and wearing expensive sunglasses. He looked like an actor. He wore a tight-fitting shirt and expensive jeans. Elena watched, confused. Who was this? Before the man could even knock, the front door was pulled open. Isabella was standing there. And she was smiling. It wasn't her usual, cold, fake smile. It was a real, genuine, excited smile. A smile Elena had never seen her give to her husband, Mr. Alistair. "Julian." Isabella laughed, and her voice sounded like a happy young girl. She ran out of the door and jumped into the man's arms. The man, Julian, hugged her tight. Way too tight. His hands were in her hair, and he lifted her off the ground. It was not a hug for a friend. It was not a hug for a cousin. Elena felt a cold, sick feeling in her stomach. Isabella pulled away, her face flushed and happy. She saw Elena watching from the doorway. Her happy smile faded a little, turning into an annoyed glare. "Oh," she said, waving her hand. "Elena, this is my cousin. My cousin Julian. He is visiting from out of town." The word cousin sounded like a lie. Isabella turned back to Julian and took his hand. Come in, I've missed you so much." They walked past Elena and went into the main living room, laughing and whispering to each other. Elena stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. As Julian, the cousin, walked into the living room, he stopped and looked back at Elena. He was still holding Isabella's hand. He slowly, very slowly, took off his sunglasses. His eyes were not smiling. They were as cold and dark as a winter night. He looked at her as if she was a bug he wanted to step on. He didn't just look at her. He warned her with his eyes. Elena quickly looked down at the floor, her hands shaking so hard she dropped her polishing cloth. She knew in that single moment that this was not just a visitor. This was the beginning of the end. And she was standing right in the middle of a terrible, dark secret. Elena's heart was pounding so hard she was afraid the man Julian could hear it. His cold, dark eyes stayed on her for a second longer, a look that said, "I see you and you are nothing." Then he turned away, put his arm around Isabella's waist, and walked with her into the grand living room. Elena quickly picked up her polishing cloth, her hands shaking. She was just a simple maid, but she was not stupid. She knew exactly what she had just seen. That was not a cousin. That was a secret. And secrets in a house this big were dangerous. From that day on, everything changed. The man Julian started visiting more and more often. He never came in the evening when Alistair was home. He only came during the day in his loud red car, always after Alistair's quiet, black Rolls-Royce had rolled down the long driveway and disappeared. At first, Julian came once a week. Then twice. Soon it was almost every day. And the house, which was once quiet and lonely, became loud. When Alistair was home, the mansion was like a library. Silent. Cold. But when he was gone and Julian was there, it turned into a party. Isabella, who was usually so cold and stiff, would laugh. It was a loud, high-pitched laugh that echoed down the marble hallways. Elena would hear them in the living room, music playing, the sound of champagne corks popping. Elena. Isabella would shout, her voice sharp. Bring us more ice. And be quick about it, you slow little thing. Elena would have to walk into the room, her eyes on the floor. Julian would be sitting on the white sofa, his feet up on the expensive glass table. Isabella would be sitting next to him, her feet in his lap. They would be drinking in the middle of the afternoon. Julian would watch Elena as she poured the ice, his eyes cold. He liked making her nervous. So, Isabella, he said one day, his voice thick and lazy, is this the best help you could find? She looks like she just fell off a turnip truck. Isabella laughed. I know, isn't it pathetic? But she's cheap. And she's so stupid she doesn't even know what she's looking at. Right, Elena? Elena's face burned with shame. She wanted to say something. She wanted to defend herself. But she thought of her mother, sick in her small bed, waiting for the medicine. So Elena said the only thing she could. Yes, madam. She bowed her head and hurried out of the room, her heart feeling like a heavy stone. But the shame was not the worst part. The worst part was the betrayal. Mr. Alistair was a kind man. He was always polite to Elena. He always said please, and thank you. He paid her more than she had ever dreamed of, and that money was saving her mother's life. He was a good man. A good, trusting, lonely man. And his wife was doing this, in his own house. On his own sofas. Drinking his expensive champagne. Sometimes Julian and Isabella would go upstairs. They would walk to the master bedroom, Alistair's bedroom, and they would close the door. And Elena would hear the click of the lock. She would be left downstairs to clean up their mess, her stomach twisting in disgust. She felt like she was a part of their dirty secret. At night, Alistair would come home, looking tired from his long day. Hello, Elena, he would say, giving her a small, kind smile. Isabella in a good mood today? And Elena would have to lie. Yes, sir. I believe she is. She would watch him walk up the same stairs that the other man had walked up just hours earlier. She would watch him go into the same bedroom. And she would feel sick. Elena was trapped. She needed this job. She could not leave. But every day she felt like she was helping them lie to the one person in the house who had been good to her. She became a ghost. She learned to clean without making a sound. She learned to see everything and say nothing. She learned to hide her disgust and her fear behind a blank, empty face. But as the weeks turned into a month, the secret got darker. Isabella and Julian started to get careless. They started to believe their own lies. They believed Elena was too stupid to understand. They believed they were smarter than Alistair. And they started to talk. One hot afternoon, Elena was scrubbing the tall glass doors that led out to the swimming pool. Isabella and Julian were lying on lounge chairs by the water. They had been drinking all day. Elena was on the inside of the glass and they were on the outside. They didn't even notice her. They thought she was just part of the furniture. Elena was scrubbing, her head down, when she heard Julian's voice. It was not his usual lazy, laughing voice. It was angry. I'm tired of this, Isabella, he snapped. I'm tired of sneaking around like a thief. I'm not a part-time lover. I'm better than that. Shoo, lower your voice, Isabella hissed. The help might hear you. I don't care about the help. Julian said, his voice rising. I'm tired of waiting. Just leave him. Divorce the old man. His lawyers will give you a few million just to make you go away. We can take that. We can go to our own island. Why are we still here? Elena's hands froze on her cleaning cloth. Her heart stopped. She did not dare to move. She was trapped, listening. There was a long silence. Elena could hear the clink of Isabella's glass as she set it down. When Isabella finally spoke, her voice was not high and laughing. It was a sound Elena had never heard before. It was low, cold, and dead. It was the scariest sound she had ever heard. A few million? Isabella said. She laughed, but it was not a happy sound. It was a quick, sharp, ugly ha. A few million? She repeated. Julian, you are so simple. You think so small. A few million is what I spend on jewelry in a month. I'm not his girlfriend. I am his wife. The prenup, the contract, it is iron. If I divorce him, I get almost nothing. A nice apartment, a small allowance. I would be comfortable. But I do not want to be comfortable. Julian's voice was quieter now. What are you saying, Isabella? What do you want? Elena watched, frozen, through the glass. She saw Isabella sit up on her chair. She slowly took off her sunglasses and turned to look at Julian. Her eyes were as hard and dead as stones. I don't want a few million, Julian, she said, her voice like ice. I want all of it. The skyscrapers. The private jets. The banks. The houses. I want the entire empire. I've spent 10 years of my life being bored by that old man. I have earned it. And I am not leaving this house with a few million. I am leaving this house with everything. Julian was silent. Elena could see the fear on his handsome face. He was in over his head. Isabella, he whispered. That's not possible. The only way you get everything is if he dies, Isabella finished. Her voice was flat. She said it like she was ordering dinner. The sad, grieving widow. The poor, heartbroken wife. She doesn't get a few million. The grieving widow gets it all. Elena's blood turned to ice. She felt like she was going to be sick right there on the white carpet. This was not just cheating. This was not just a secret affair. This was a plan. She was listening to a woman plan to kill her own husband. Elena wanted to run. She wanted to scream. But she was frozen in pure terror. Julian stood up from his chair. He was pale. You're crazy. You're actually completely crazy. That's murder, Isabella. We would be caught. No, we wouldn't, Isabella said, standing up. She walked over to him and put her hands on his chest. She was smiling again, that sweet fake smile. Not if we're smart. And I am very smart. He's been working too hard. He's been stressed. His father died of a heart attack. His grandfather died of a heart attack. It runs in the family. She looked up at Julian, her eyes dark. All we have to do is help nature along. A heart attack is so easy to fake. If you have the right medicine. Elena couldn't breathe. The cleaning cloth fell from her numb hand and hit the floor with a soft thud. It was quiet. But in the silent house it sounded like a drum. Thud. Outside, Isabella and Julian both froze. Their heads snapped toward the glass door. What was that? Julian whispered. It's just the maid, Isabella hissed, her eyes scanning the glass. She's in there cleaning? They couldn't see Elena clearly as she was in the shadows of the room. But Elena could see them. They were staring, trying to see if she had heard. Elena's mind was screaming. Run. Hide. Say something. But she did the only thing she could. She slowly, her body shaking so hard she could barely move, bent down and picked up the cleaning cloth. She turned her back to the glass doors. She began to scrub the glass, her hands moving, even as her world was ending. She scrubbed and scrubbed, praying they would believe she was just a stupid, simple maid. After what felt like a lifetime, she heard Isabella laugh. See? She's an idiot. She heard nothing. Come on. Let's go upstairs. I've had enough, son. Elena did not stop scrubbing until she heard their footsteps fade away, and she heard the front door close. Julian was leaving. The second she was alone, Elena ran to the staff bathroom. She locked the door, fell to the floor, and threw up. She was shaking from head to toe. She was living in a house with a monster. A beautiful, smiling, evil monster. And she was the only one who knew. What could she do? She was a poor maid from a village. Isabella was the most powerful woman in the city. If Elena went to Alistair, what could she say? Sir, I think your wife is planning to kill you? She had no proof. It was her word against the word of his wife. Isabella would say she was a liar. She would say she was a jealous, crazy girl. Alistair might even believe her. Elena would be fired. She would be thrown out. She would lose her job. Her mother would die. But if she said nothing, Alistair would die. Elena sat on the cold tile floor, her head in her hands, and cried. She was trapped. No matter what she did, someone would be hurt. For the next 2 weeks, Elena lived in a state of pure, unending fear. She watched Isabella constantly. She looked for any sign. And she saw it. Isabella suddenly became caring. She, who had not touched her husband in months, suddenly started fluffing his pillows. Alistair would come home rubbing his head. I have such a headache, my dear. I've been so stressed. And Isabella, instead of ignoring him, would run to his side. Oh, my darling. You poor thing. You are working too hard. You need to rest. Let me get you something. It was the most terrifying thing Elena had ever seen. The loving, caring wife. It was all an act. A performance before the murder. Elena's fear made her brave. She started to follow Isabella, always silent, always in the shadows. She had to find the proof. One evening, Alistair was working late. Isabella was in the garden, by the fountain, talking on her phone. She was whispering, but her voice was sharp and angry. Elena hid behind a large, stone statue. Her heart was in her throat. What do you mean it's delayed? Isabella hissed into the phone. I paid you a lot of money. I need it now. I don't care what you have to do. There was a pause. Elena held her breath. Yes, that's what I said, Isabella continued, pacing back and forth. It must be untraceable. No taste. No smell. It just has to stop the heart. It has to look like a simple, natural heart attack. He's been stressed, everyone will believe it. Isabella stopped pacing. She laughed. Yes, the P.O. box was a good idea. Just get it to me. I'll handle the rest. We are finally going to be rich. We are finally going to be free. Isabella hung up the phone. She stood there for a moment, a dark shadow in the beautiful garden, smiling to herself. Elena was so terrified, so sick, that she didn't realize her foot was tangled in a rose bush. She tried to back away silently into the dark. Snap. She stepped on a dry, thick branch. The sound was as loud as a gunshot in the quiet garden. Isabella's head snapped around. Her eyes, wide with sudden panic, stared right at the statue where Elena was hiding. Who's there? Isabella shrieked, her voice no longer smooth but a raw, terrified scream. Who is out there? Show yourself. Elena was trapped. She was caught. And she knew in that one horrible second that this woman was not just planning a murder. She was capable of murder. And Elena had just been caught listening. Who's there? Isabella's scream ripped through the quiet garden. Show yourself. I know you're there. Elena's heart stopped. She was frozen behind the stone statue, tangled in the rose bushes. Her mind was screaming, run. Hide. She sees you. She watched in pure, cold terror as Isabella's dark shape stomped across the grass, her face a mask of fury and panic. Isabella was not a sophisticated, calm wife anymore. She was a cornered animal. Who is it? Isabella shrieked again, her voice cracking. She reached the statue. She was just 5 feet away from Elena, who was holding her breath, her entire body shaking. Isabella looked around wildly. Her eyes scanned the darkness, peering into the deep shadows where Elena was hiding. Elena could see the moonlight shine on Isabella's wide, terrified eyes. I heard you. Isabella hissed, taking another step. She was about to look behind the statue. She was about to find Elena. Click. Suddenly, a blinding white light flooded the entire garden. The loud click and hum of the main security spotlights made both women jump. Alistair had them set on an automatic timer. At 9 p.m. they turned on. Isabella threw her arm up to cover her eyes. Arg. Stupid lights, she cursed. She was blinded. She couldn't see anything past the bright glare. But Elena, who was deep in the shadows, could see her. This was it. This was her only chance. While Isabella was blinded and cursing at the lights, Elena did the only thing she could. She didn't stand up. She didn't run. She crawled. Staying low to the ground, she moved as silently as a snake, backwards, deeper into the thick, dark bushes at the edge of the garden, away from the statue. A sharp thorn ripped her sleeve and cut her arm, but she didn't make a sound. She bit her lip to stop from crying out, tasting her own blood. Isabella, blinded by the light, was furious. Useless, she screamed to the empty garden. Whoever you are, you're just a coward. She stomped back to the house, her hands clenched into fists. She looked back at the garden one more time, her eyes full of suspicion and hatred. Then she went inside, and Elena heard the heavy thud and click of the garden door being locked. Elena was trapped outside. She stayed in the bushes for what felt like a lifetime, her arm bleeding, her body shaking from cold and fear. She was locked out and a murderer was locked in. She had to wait 2 more hours until the whole house was dark and silent. She finally crept to a small staff window at the back of the kitchen, one she knew had a broken lock. She carefully, silently, slipped it open and climbed inside, her heart in her throat. She ran on her tiptoes to her tiny room, locked the door, and fell onto her bed, finally letting out the silent scream she had been holding in. She had escaped. But she knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that she had not been fast enough. Isabella had heard her. Isabella knew someone was there. The next morning the house felt different. The air was thick and heavy with suspicion. When Elena came out to clean, she found Isabella already awake. This was strange. Isabella never woke up before 10. Isabella was sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee, her eyes red and puffy. She looked like she hadn't slept at all. When Elena walked in, Isabella's head snapped up. Her eyes, sharp as a hawk's, locked onto Elena. "Good morning, madam," Elena said, her voice shaking. She tried to keep her head down. Isabella said nothing. She just stared. She watched Elena get the cleaning supplies. She watched Elena fill the bucket with water. Her stare was so intense it felt like a physical weight. "You're shaking, Elena," Isabella said, her voice quiet and dangerous. Elena's hands, which were pouring soap, were trembling. She couldn't stop them. I am just cold, madam," Elena whispered. Isabella let out a short, ugly laugh. Cold? In the middle of summer? How strange. She stood up and walked over to Elena, stopping so close Elena could smell her expensive, flowery perfume. It smelled like poison. Isabella tilted her head. Her eyes slowly moved down and they stopped. They stopped on Elena's arm. Elena's blood ran cold. On her forearm, just peeking out from her sleeve, was the long, red, angry scratch from the rose bush in the garden. Elena's heart fell through the floor. She had been caught. It was over. Isabella looked at the scratch for a long, silent second. Then she looked back up at Elena's terrified face. A slow, cold smile spread across Isabella's lips. It was the most terrifying smile Elena had ever seen. Isabella didn't say, "I saw you." She didn't say, "It was you in the garden." She said something much, much worse. "Be careful, Elena," Isabella whispered, her voice sounding sweet like honey. "This house can be a dangerous place. It's so easy to have accidents. A stupid, clumsy girl could slip on the marble stairs. She could fall. She could break her neck. It would be a terrible, terrible tragedy. Do you understand what I'm saying?" It was not a question. It was a threat. Elena's whole body went numb. She was saying, "I know you were there. I know you heard me. And I can make you disappear." "Yes, madam," Elena whispered, her voice barely audible. I understand." "Good girl," Isabella smiled. "Now get back to work. And try not to be so clumsy." Isabella turned and walked out of the kitchen, humming a happy little tune. Elena's legs gave out and she had to grab the counter to keep from collapsing. She was no longer just a witness. She was a target. For the next week, Elena lived in a personal hell. She was a prisoner in the house. She couldn't quit. Isabella would see that as an admission of guilt. She might even send someone after her to keep her quiet. She couldn't go to the police, she had no proof. And she couldn't warn Alistair because Isabella was watching her every second. If Elena even tried to walk toward Alistair's office, Isabella would suddenly appear. "Elena, the bathrooms are filthy. Go clean them now." Isabella was toying with her. She was a cat playing with a terrified mouse. And all the while Alistair was getting worse. The stress or perhaps something else was making him sicker. "I feel so dizzy lately, Isabella," he would say at the dinner table. He looked pale and weak. "Oh, my poor darling," Isabella would say, putting on her best caring wife performance for him, while shooting Elena a cold, hard look. "You just need to rest. I will take care of you. I promise." Elena had to stand there, pouring his water, her hands shaking, knowing that Isabella was not a wife. She was a predator, waiting for her prey to become weak enough to kill. Elena was losing hope. She was trapped. Isabella was too smart. Then, 4 days later, it happened. Elena was dusting the main hallway when she saw a man in a uniform walk up to the front door. He was holding a small, brown, padded envelope. A special courier. Before Elena could even take a step, Isabella appeared out of nowhere. She had been waiting. She ran to the door, pulled it open, and snatched the small package from the man's hand. She quickly signed the electronic pad. "Thank you, that will be all," she said, her voice sharp. She slammed the door in the man's face. She stood alone in the grand hallway, her back to Elena. She didn't know Elena was watching, hidden in the shadows. Elena watched as Isabella looked down at the small, padded envelope in her hands. She held it like it was a treasure. A look of pure, greedy triumph spread across her face. She had it. Elena knew with a certainty that made her sick what was in that envelope. The poison. The medicine to stop Alistair's heart. It was here. It was in the house. The clock was ticking. Isabella didn't go to her room. She didn't hide the package. She slipped it into the pocket of her silk robe and walked, not to the living room but straight to the kitchen. Elena's blood ran cold. No. Not now. Not in the middle of the day. Master Alistair isn't even home. But then, as if in a nightmare, Elena heard a car. She looked out the front window. It was Alistair's Rolls-Royce. It was coming up the driveway hours early. The car stopped. The driver ran around to open the back door. Alistair didn't get out. He fell out. He was pale as a ghost, covered in sweat and clutching his head. He was leaning on his security guard. "My head," Alistair moaned, his voice weak. I think I'm going to collapse. I need a doctor." Elena watched in horror. Isabella came running out of the kitchen, her face a mask of fake concern. But her eyes were gleaming. "My darling," she cried, running to him. "You look terrible. You poor, poor thing." "Doctor," Alistair mumbled. "Need a doctor." "Nonsense, darling," Isabella said, her voice suddenly firm and sweet. You don't need a doctor. You just need to rest. You're overworked. I have a new special tea. It will make you feel better instantly. I will bring it up to you myself. She helped the guard get Alistair inside, pushing him toward the grand staircase. Go on up to bed. I'll be up in 5 minutes with your tea. Alistair, too sick and weak to argue, just nodded. He slowly, painfully began to climb the stairs. The moment he was out of sight, Isabella turned around. Her fake, worried face was gone. She was smiling. A small, secret, evil smile. She turned and walked straight back to the kitchen. Elena was frozen in the hallway. This was it. It was not a plan for tonight. It was a plan for right now. Isabella thought this was the perfect opportunity. Alistair was already sick. He was already weak. If he died now, no one would question it. They would all say, "Oh, the poor man. He worked himself to death. It was a heart attack." Elena's mind was racing. She looked at the man she had to save, his back disappearing up the staircase. She looked at the woman who was about to kill him, her shadow disappearing into the kitchen. She was the only one in the world who knew the truth. Elena ran. She didn't run to the kitchen. She didn't run to her room. She ran up the back staircase, the hidden one for the staff. She ran as fast as she could, her feet not making a sound on the carpet. She ran to the top of the grand main staircase. She hid in the shadows of the upper hallway, her heart pounding so loud she was sure it would give her away. She peered through the dark wooden railings of the staircase. From here she had a perfect, secret view straight down into the kitchen. She watched, her hand over her mouth. She saw Isabella place Alistair's favorite teacup on the counter. She saw the kettle boil. She saw Isabella pour the steaming water. She saw Isabella put in a tea bag and a spoon of sugar. Then Isabella stopped. She walked to the kitchen door and looked out into the main hallway. She looked left. She looked right. She saw no one. She smiled. She walked back to the counter. She reached deep into the pocket of her silk robe. She pulled out the small, dark, glass bottle. Elena had to bite her own hand to stop from screaming. Isabella, with a steady hand, unscrewed the white cap. She held the bottle over the hot, steaming tea. She tilted it. A stream of fine, white powder poured out of the bottle and into the cup. It disappeared instantly, dissolving in the heat. Isabella didn't just put in a little. She emptied almost the entire bottle. She screwed the cap back on, put the bottle in her pocket and picked up a small spoon. She stirred the tea slowly, calmly. She put the spoon down. She picked up the cup and put it on the silver tray. She picked up the tray. She was humming a happy tune as she began to walk out of the kitchen. She was walking toward the stairs. She was walking toward her husband's room. She was carrying a silver tray with a cup of hot, deadly poison. Elena was trapped at the top of the stairs, shaking, her mind screaming. I have no proof. If I scream, she will say I am crazy. She will fire me. She will have me arrested. My mother will die. I will lose everything. Isabella reached the bottom of the staircase. Her expensive shoe touched the first marble step. Click. Elena's heart stopped. But if I do nothing. Click. Isabella's other foot hit the second step. He will die. Isabella was coming up the stairs. She was smiling, holding the tray. Elena knew in that final terrible second that all her fears didn't matter. Her job didn't matter. Her mother didn't matter. Only one thing mattered. This was the moment. There was no more time. She had to choose. And as Isabella looked up, her face full of fake love, ready to give her husband the drink that would end his life, Elena knew what she had to do. Click, click, click. The sound of Isabella's high heels on the marble staircase was the only sound in the giant, silent mansion. Each step was a countdown to a man's death. Elena was frozen at the top of the stairs, her heart a block of ice. She could see the sweet, fake smile on Isabella's face. She could see the silver tray. She could see the delicate teacup, steaming with hot, white poison. Isabella was halfway up the stairs. 10 more steps. Do something. Do something. She'll kill you. She'll fire you. She'll say you're lying. You have no proof. She'll destroy you. Your mother. Click, click. Isabella was almost at the top. She was just a few feet away. She looked up and saw Elena hiding in the shadows. Isabella's smile faltered just for a second. Her eyes narrowed. What are you doing, girl? Get out of the way. Can't you see the master is sick? She tried to push past Elena. But Elena looked past Isabella, down the hall, and saw the door to the master bedroom. She could hear a low, pained moan from inside. Mr. Alistair. Her kind boss. The man who gave her a chance. The man who was saving her mother's life. He was in there, sick and weak, waiting for his wife to bring him comfort. But she was bringing him death. Something inside Elena snapped. It was not fear. It was not anger. It was a pure, burning hot rage. As Isabella raised her hand to push her, Elena moved. She didn't run away. She ran forward. She sprinted past Isabella, down the last few feet of the hallway, and slammed her hands against the master bedroom door, throwing it open with a crash that echoed through the entire house. Bam! Alistair Vance, who was lying in his bed, pale and sweating, jolted up, his heart pounding. What in God's name? Isabella spun around, her face twisting in pure, murderous fury. You wretched girl. How dare you? She started running after her, her high heels sliding on the expensive rugs. Get out of his room. Get out. Alistair was confused. He saw his wife, her face red and full of hate. He saw his maid, her face pale and full of terror. Isabella reached the bedroom, holding the tray. I'm so sorry, my darling, she said to Alistair, her voice suddenly sweet and shaking. This crazy girl has lost her mind. She's obsessed. She's trying to attack us. Isabella set the tray down on the bedside table. She picked up the teacup. Here, my love, she whispered, her hands shaking. Drink this. We'll make you feel better. We will call security and have this thing removed. Alistair, still dizzy and sick, looked at the cup. He trusted his wife. He was so tired. He just wanted the pain to go away. He reached out his shaking hand for the cup. Isabella's eyes were locked on his hand. A small, triumphant smile played on her lips. She had won. Alistair's fingers were just 1 inch from the cup. Elena, who was standing by the door, her chest heaving, saw that final evil smile. This was it. The last second. The last chance. She opened her mouth and screamed. It was a scream that came from the bottom of her soul. A scream that carried all her fear, all her anger, and all her courage. Don't drink it, master. Please don't drink that tea. Alistair's hand froze in midair. The room went completely, deathly silent. Alistair slowly pulled his hand back. He stared at the teacup. He stared at his terrified maid. And then he stared at his wife. The sweet, loving smile was gone from Isabella's face. It was replaced by a look of such cold, venomous hatred that Alistair felt his heart stop. What did you say? Alistair whispered to Elena, his voice weak. Before Elena could speak, Isabella exploded. She's lying. Isabella shrieked, her voice high and cracking. She's a liar, Alistair. Can't you see? She's a stupid, jealous village girl. She wants to destroy us. She's a witch. She's been giving you looks, trying to seduce you. And now that I've caught her, she's making up these filthy lies to save her job. Isabella pointed a shaking finger at Elena. Get out. Get out of my house before I call the police and have you arrested for trespassing. Alistair was a billionaire. He had not built his empire by being a fool. He was a smart man. And he was watching. He looked at Elena. Her face was pale and tears were streaming down her cheeks, but she was looking him right in the eye. Her terror was real. Then he looked at his wife. Her face was red and splotchy. Her hands were clenched into claws. And her eyes were darting back and forth between him and the teacup. She was terrified. Not of a crazy maid, but of something else. What is wrong with the tea, Elena? Alistair asked, his voice suddenly stronger. Elena took a deep, shuddering breath. She pointed her own shaking finger not at Isabella but at the cup. It's poison, sir, she said, her voice choking on tears. She wants to kill you. I saw her. I saw her with my own eyes. I was at the top of the stairs. I watched her in the kitchen. Lies. Filthy, disgusting lies. Isabella screamed. She lunged at Elena, her hands raised like claws, ready to scratch her eyes out. I'll kill you. Isabella, stop. Alistair shouted. His voice was not loud, but it was full of cold, hard power. It was the voice he used in the boardroom. Isabella froze. Alistair slowly, painfully swung his legs out of the bed. His headache was gone, replaced by a terrible, cold dread. You saw her? He said to Elena. You saw her put something in the tea? Yes, sir. Elena cried, the words tumbling out. A white powder. She poured it in. It came in a small brown package today. A courier delivered it. She took it, and then, she put it in your tea. I saw her. Isabella's face, which was red with anger, suddenly went completely, totally white. As white as a sheet of paper. She had stopped breathing. Elena hadn't just seen her in the kitchen. She had seen the package. She knew everything. And the bottle, Elena said, her voice dropping to a whisper. She put the bottle in her pocket. After she poured it in. The small dark glass bottle, it's in her pocket. Right now. There was a final, terrible silence. Alistair, Isabella, and Elena. 3 people in a room, their lives hanging on a single terrible thread. Alistair turned his head and looked at his wife. He didn't speak. He just looked at her. Isabella was shaking. Her whole body was trembling. She was not the strong, angry, powerful wife anymore. She was a small, trapped, guilty thing. Her hand, without her even thinking, slowly moved to the side of her silk robe, clutching the pocket. She was protecting it. She was protecting the evidence. And in that one tiny guilty movement, Alistair saw the truth. His heart, which had been lonely for 10 years, now broke completely. The woman he loved, the woman he had given his life to, was a stranger. A murderer. Isabella, he said, and his voice was the voice of a dead man. Take your hand away from your pocket. No, she whispered, her eyes wide with panic. No, Alistair, please, you can't believe her. It's not true. It's a lie. She's lying. She's. Give me the bottle, Isabella, Alistair said. He took a step toward her. No. Isabella shrieked. She turned and ran. She ran for the bedroom door to get away, to hide. But Alistair, though sick, was faster. He grabbed her arm. She spun around and fought him, scratching and biting. Let me go. Let me go. I hate you. I've always hated you. She wasn't his wife anymore. She was a monster. Alistair was stronger. He grabbed her robe. He plunged his hand into her pocket. His fingers closed around something small, cold, and hard. He pulled it out. He held it up to the light for all of them to see. It was a small, dark glass bottle with a white cap, just like Elena had described. Inside, at the very bottom, was a small dusting of leftover white powder. The fight went out of Isabella. All the strength, all the hate, all the anger, it just evaporated. Her legs turned to water. She didn't just kneel. She collapsed. She fell to the floor in a heap of expensive silk, her hands covering her face. And she began to sob. It was not a cry of sadness. It was the raw, ugly, howling wail of a person whose entire world had just been destroyed. A person who had been caught. A person who had lost everything. No. Please, Alistair. I can explain, she wailed from the floor. It was him. It was Julian. He made me. He said you were weak, he said. But Alistair wasn't listening. He was standing perfectly still like a statue. In one hand he held the bottle of poison. In the other hand he held the teacup that was meant to kill him. He looked at the poison. He looked at the tea. And then he looked at the shattered, weeping, evil woman on his floor. The woman who had been his wife for 10 years. Elena stood by the door, tears streaming down her face, her body shaking from the shock of what she had just done. She had saved him. But she had also just ended a marriage. Alistair raised his head. He looked past his broken wife, past the poison. He looked at Elena. His face was a mask of pure, unbelievable pain. He opened his mouth but no sound came out. He was a billionaire. He had everything. And he had nothing. The 3 of them were frozen. The king. The queen. And the maid. And the marriage was over. Now, what happens? What does a man do when he is holding proof that his wife tried to murder him? You think this is the end? It's just the beginning. The silence in the room was louder than the scream had been. It was a thick, heavy, terrible silence, broken only by the sound of Isabella's raw, pathetic sobs from the floor. Alistair Vance stood like a man made of stone. He was no longer sick. The adrenaline, the shock, the pure, cold betrayal had burned away his headache. He was now just a man holding the 2 pieces of his shattered life, the cup of poison and the bottle that proved the lie. Elena was still standing by the door, her whole body shaking, tears streaming down her face. She had done it. She had saved him. But she had also just destroyed a life, a marriage, a home. She had no idea what would happen next. Alistair lowered his hands. He calmly placed the teacup and the small bottle on the bedside table. He did not look at his wife. He did not look at the poison. He looked at Elena. His face was a mask of pain. His voice, when he spoke, was a dry, broken whisper. You saved my life, he said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. He was looking at her, really seeing her for the first time. Not as a maid, not as a servant, but as the only person in his entire world who had been loyal. Please, Isabella wailed from the floor, her voice ugly. She crawled forward on her knees, grabbing at the hem of his pants. Please, Alistair, don't look at her. Look at me. It wasn't me. It was him. It was Julian. He put these ideas in my head. He's the monster, not me. I'm your wife. I love you. I've always loved you. Alistair looked down at her. He looked at her manicured fingers clawing at his clothes. He had bought her those rings. He had bought her that expensive silk robe. He had bought her everything. And she had tried to trade it all for his death. Her words, "I love you," were the most disgusting lie of all. He slowly, calmly, pulled his leg away from her grasp as if she were something dirty. "Elena," he said, his voice hard as iron, never taking his eyes off the maid. "Call Marcus. Tell him to get to the master bedroom. Now." Marcus was the head of his personal security. Elena, her hands shaking, ran to the house phone on the wall and dialed the number for security. "Mr. Vance needs you. In the master bedroom. Now." Isabella heard the coldness in his voice, the finality, and her begging stopped. Her tears of regret instantly turned to tears of rage. She scrambled to her feet, her face no longer sad but twisted and evil. You, she shrieked, pointing at Elena. "You did this. You little, village, rat. You came into my house to destroy me." "No," Alistair said. His voice cut through her, screaming like a knife. "You did this." He turned to his wife. And for the first time she saw the real Alistair Vance. Not the tired, lonely husband, but the cold, ruthless billionaire who had built an empire. "This is my house, Isabella," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "And you are no longer welcome here." "You can't do this," she screamed. "I am your wife. I will take you for everything. I will tell the world what you... I will. I'll get the best lawyers. Oh." The bedroom door burst open. Marcus, a huge, bald man in a sharp black suit, stepped in. He looked at the scene, Alistair cold and calm, Elena crying by the phone, and Isabella, her face a mask of hate, her hair wild. Marcus didn't even need to ask. He had seen this kind of thing before. "Sir," he said. Alistair pointed to the bedside table. "Marcus, take the teacup and this bottle. Do not touch them with your hands. Put them in an evidence bag. This is a crime scene." He then looked at his wife. "Marcus, please escort this woman out of my home. She is not to touch anything. She is not to take anything. Get her out of my sight." Isabella's face went white with a new kind of terror. The terror of losing money. "No. No, you can't. My clothes. My jewelry. My cars. You can't just throw me out. Alistair. After 10 years. You can't do this." Marcus was a professional. He grabbed Isabella's arm. She fought. She screamed. She kicked. "I hate you," she howled at Alistair. "I've always hated you. You were old and boring and weak. I hope you die alone." "And I," Alistair replied, his voice dead, "hope you enjoy prison." Marcus dragged her out of the room. Her screams echoed through the giant empty mansion, the screams of a failed murderer, until the heavy front door slammed shut, and the house was finally silent. Alistair Vance stood in the middle of his room for a long time. The adrenaline was gone. His headache was back. He stumbled and his legs gave out. He fell backward and sat heavily on the bed. The same bed where he was supposed to die. He put his head in his hands. And the great, powerful billionaire began to cry. He was not crying for Isabella. He was crying for the 10 years he had wasted. For the love he had given to a monster. For the trust he had lost. Elena was still by the door. She didn't know what to do. Should she leave? Should she stay? She slowly, quietly walked over. She was just a maid. She didn't know what to say to a broken billionaire. So she said the only thing she knew. "Sir," she whispered. Can I get you a glass of water?" Alistair looked up, his eyes red. He let out a small, broken laugh. "A glass of water. A safe, clean, simple glass of water." "Yes, Elena," he whispered. "Yes, you can." When she came back, he was standing by the window looking out at the gardens. He looked old. "Sir," she said. "The police will be here soon. Your lawyer is on his way." Alistair nodded. He turned to her. "She threatened you, didn't she?" he asked. Elena's eyes went wide. "Yes, sir." "Why did you stay? Why did you risk your life for me? You could have run. You could have said nothing. Why?" Elena looked down at her hands. She thought of her village. She thought of her mother. My mother is very sick, sir," she said, her voice quiet. Your money, you are paying for her medicine. You have been very kind to me, sir. My mother always taught me," she said, Evil only wins when good people do nothing. I could not do nothing. Alistair stared at her. This young, poor, simple girl had more honor, more courage, and more character than anyone in his entire billion-dollar world. He had been giving his money to the wrong person. He walked to his desk. He picked up his personal phone. "You are right, Elena," he said. "You are not a person who does nothing." He made a call. "Hello, Dr. Ben Jaffo," he said. "This is Alistair Vance." "Yes. I have an emergency. I need your best air ambulance team. I need them to fly to a small village." "Elena, where are you from?" "A small village in the mountains. I need them to pick up a patient." "Her name?" "Elena?" "My mother's name is Ya." Elena's hands flew to her mouth. "Her name is Ya," Alistair said into the phone. "And I need you to bring her here. Not to the public hospital. To your private clinic. I want the best room. The best doctors. The best medicine in the world. Whatever it costs. I am paying for all of it. Have your team in the air in 1 hour." He hung up the phone. Elena was sobbing. But they were not tears of fear. They were tears of shock, of gratitude. "Sir. I cannot. I don't know." Alistair walked over and gently, kindly, put his hand on her shoulder. "You saved my life, Elena," he said. "Now I'm going to save your mother's. This is not a gift. This is an exchange. Loyalty for loyalty. That is something my money could never buy from Isabella." He then said, "You are no longer a maid in this house. As of right now, you are a guest." The months that followed were a storm. Isabella and Julian were both arrested. The evidence was overwhelming. The bottle of poison. The security footage of the package being delivered. The angry text messages found on Julian's phone. And, most powerful of all, the brave, honest, clear testimony of Elena. They were both found guilty of conspiracy and attempted murder. The judge called their actions cold, greedy, and inhuman. They were sentenced to 25 years in prison. They lost everything. Alistair's lawyers divorced Isabella so fast that she was no longer Mrs. Vance before the trial even ended. Her betrayal and her crimes meant she got nothing. Not $1. Not one diamond. Alistair Vance, heartbroken but alive, slowly rebuilt his life. He was smarter now. Quieter. More careful. And what about Elena? Her mother, Ya, was flown to the city. The best doctors in the world, paid for by Alistair, fought for her life. And they won. She made a full recovery. Alistair did not just send them back to their village. He bought them a beautiful, new, safe house in the city. He paid for Elena to go to school and then to university. He said the world needed more people with her kind of courage. Elena was no longer a maid. She was a student. She was a hero. And she was a friend. Sometimes, Alistair would look at his new, quiet life, and he would think about that terrible day. He would think about the teacup, the poison, and the evil smile of his wife. But then he would think of Elena, the girl who had nothing but who was brave enough to risk it all. The girl who had saved him. He had lost his wife, but he had found his faith in people. And he finally understood what it meant to be truly, truly rich. Thank you so much for watching this story all the way to the end. It was an incredible journey. If you were moved by Elena's courage, please like this video. And for more powerful stories that will make you think, make sure you subscribe to this channel right now, and hit that notification bell. Your support helps us grow and bring you more of the content you love. We'll see you in the next story.